Hi guys, I'm Ari and we're in the Lime Fight. Today I'm going to be interviewing Mrs. Beth Miller. So, Miss Beth, what training and experience do you have in helping people deal with grief?
Hi, Ari. I'm a licensed professional counselor in LPC, so I have my bachelor's degree from Hannibal LaGrange University in psychology, and then I have my master's degree in counseling psychology from Forest Institute down in Springfield, Missouri. And then I've done counseling. I've worked in counseling at Truman State University at their counseling center. I've done private practice for Anchor Counseling, and now my new business, Renew Counseling, in Kirksville, Missouri. And so I've worked with lots of clients at different ages on grief and chronic pain, helping them work through that and set their own personal goals to work through whatever they're dealing with in regards to grief and chronic pain.
And then, what are some unhealthy ways to deal with grief?
So we all have lots of different coping skills that we use, and I would say that they're on a spectrum of unhealthy to healthy. And so sometimes for some people something's going to be unhealthy that might be healthy for another person, if that makes sense. Like maybe exercise would be a good coping skill for most people, but maybe some people would take it too extreme and be exercising way too much, and then it would become unhealthy. So any coping skill can in a way become unhealthy if it's too much or taken too extreme. So anyways, some unhealthy ones for dealing with grief, people can turn to things like substance abuse or alcohol abuse, or just turn to a lot of different substances. Sometimes that can be overeating, any kind of addiction. Sometimes that might be anything that's just taken way too extreme and done way too frequently, like maybe even shopping or spending time with unhealthy people and spending way too much time with those unhealthy people. So anything can kind of become unhealthy if it's taken to the extreme. But like I said, eating might be an unhealthy coping skill, but maybe it's not as unhealthy as heavy substance abuse. So maybe it's just a little bit healthier than that, but there's probably even healthier options, which might be journaling or reading or something like that. So it's just kind of on a spectrum, and you have to gauge it for yourself of like how much of this is a good thing and how much of this is too much. Just like watching Netflix. Do you have Netflix or any type of streaming service?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe like an episode of something or like 2 episodes would be kind of healthy way to relax and just get your mind off of things. But maybe watching it for 9 hours a day would become unhealthy.
Yeah.
So you see how there's like a spectrum of unhealthy versus healthy based on how much time you're spending doing it.
And then, so it's kind of like how in my tips and tricks videos, not all tips and tricks work for everyone.
Yep. So you have to decide, you have to kind of experiment a lot when you're trying out different coping skills and find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Okay. And then, what are healthy ways to deal with grief?
Okay, so some healthy examples would be things that bring you joy, things that bring, not even necessarily joy, but trying to do things every day, at least something that brings you joy. And then sometimes when you're dealing with grief, it's good to, you're not always going to feel joyful, obviously, you're going to feel sad. So doing things that allow you to feel sad, but putting almost a little bit of a boundary around that. So you're sad and you allow yourself to be sad and you allow yourself to grieve, but then you don't have to constantly feel like you're sad and constantly feeling like you're grieving. So making sure, so a healthy way to deal with grief would be to make sure that you have time to be sad and moments to be sad and moments to talk about it and process it. And then, like I said, you almost set like a gentle boundary around that, and like, okay, well, that was my time to be sad, and now I'm going to try to do something that brings me joy. So activities, it's going to be different for every person. So it might be activities, like I said, reading, listening to music, creating music, being creative in some way, like drawing, molding something, woodworking, sewing, like all these different ways to be creative are excellent ways for coping with grief. Might be things like exercise or journaling or going for walks or having a certain type of exercise that you enjoy doing or for certain type of physical activity. So lots of different options for lots of different people. You kind of have to experiment and see what brings you joy.
Okay, and then I have another question on that. So like spending time with family, can that become unhealthy?
So just like, so you're 12, right?
Yes.
So you live with your family, and you have a big family, and you spend lots of time with your family, right? But we all need balance, and so extended family, obviously you spend a lot of time with your nuclear family or the family that you live with. You're always around them for the most part. It's okay to have some space and some time to yourself, and I think that's an important thing to develop as you get older too, that you have some independent time and time to be to yourself. But yeah, spending time with extended family outside of your home, it can become unhealthy if it's interfering. That's a really loaded question. Yes, it can get unhealthy, especially if it's like I was saying, maybe 1 or 2 episodes of a show was a good thing, but 9 hours of Netflix maybe didn't feel good anymore. It can kind of be the same way with extended family. So maybe a few dinners, maybe a dinner a week or a few dinners a week.
Or like a sleepover with your cousins.
Yeah, maybe that feels fun. But you can usually notice the difference when you're playing or when you're spending a lot of time with your family of like, oh, this was fun, and now it feels like it's too much. And so if you just kind of gauge your own internal feelings on that, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, it just means that it's time to set a little bit more of a boundary there of like, so much was a good thing, and then after that it didn't really feel good anymore, and it was time to have some space and time to have some alone time.
We kind of had that when my cousins came over to stay with us for a week. At first it was really fun and awesome, but then it got overwhelming.
Yeah. And so sometimes that happens if you plan a week or something with someone, and it's good to learn to, get along and compromise and have fun together, or even for an extended time. But if that's happening all the time, then that can sometimes get a little bit unhealthy.
When you are in constant pain or have constant migraines, crying makes it worse, but holding your emotions in is not good either. Do you have any advice for how to best handle that?
Yeah, so ways to get out your emotions or to express your emotions, but without crying, because crying leads to the migraines. Okay, so a really good way to express yourself is through writing and journaling, or through doing, video chats kind of like this, or expressing yourself this way, or even audio things is a good way to express your emotions. So I started with writing, and that there's something really just special about even handwriting. It's shown to be better than typing, but typing would be better than nothing as a way to get your emotions out. And so lots of times things just kind of spin and spin and spin in our mind, but if we have an outlet for them, like crying or writing or talking about it, then it's like they come to an end eventually. Those thoughts kind of quit spinning and they come out and they come to an end. So writing can be a great way to do that, because you can express kind of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what's going on in your mind, and it can stop. And when I tell people to write or have a journal, I usually say have 2 sides. So have a positive side and then a crappy side. So on your positive side, that's where you're going to record things like something really fun you did today, an encouraging thing someone told you, a scripture that you read that really spoke to you, or a good quote that was really encouraging to you. So you kind of keep a track of like these positive things. And then on the other side of the journal would be the crappy things. So when you need an outlet, when you're feeling really overwhelmed or stressed or tired or want to cry or grieving, that's a way to get all that crap out.
Instead of like screaming at people.
Yes, yep. And then you don't reread that side. That's the stuff you just want to get off of your chest. So you get that side out. You can leave it in there and just kind of shut that and put it away, and kind of shut that in your mind and put it away. Kind of like that gentle boundary we talked about earlier. Or you can take it out, rip it up, shred it.
I know once I wrote all the stuff down that like annoyed me or made me frustrated, and then I burnt it. It was really fun.
Yeah, burnt it with hopefully some supervision maybe.
Yeah, my mom was supervising.
Yeah, so that's an excellent way to get rid of that. And so you're not rereading it. The whole point of it is like, get it out, get it off my chest, and move on to something else. I'm closing this in physically, and I'm kind of just closing this in my mind for a little while. Not that I can't ever come back to it, but I'm closing that in my mind. So yeah, expressing emotions when you're trying not to cry because of migraines would be the journaling, talking it out with someone, sometimes just trying to like hold on to something that if you have any special things from the person that you're grieving, and just kind of like hold on to that thing and try to use your five senses with it. So what is this, if it's, for example, if it was like a blanket or something, like I have a blanket that my grandma made. So what does this feel like when I rub on it? What does it sound like when I rub on it? What's it look like as I rub it each way? What's it smell like? I don't really want to taste a blanket, but if you had something that you can use your five senses on.
Like my great-grandmother's shells that she gave me.
Yep, so you could use like, what's it sound like? What's it feel like? What's it look like? What's it smell like?
I do not recommend tasting it.
Yeah, probably don't want to taste those.
And then sometimes in dealing with chronic pain and grief, it gets really bad. And when we feel like it would be better, and we feel like it'd be better if we just died. What is a healthy way to deal with those feelings?
Okay, so if you're thinking about, like, there's no other option, I just want to die, there's no escape from this, it'd be really a good idea, and you should talk to a parent or a trusted adult, a counselor, just someone, an adult who you can really trust, and let them know what's going on, because sometimes those thoughts just kind of get spinning in our head, and it's hard to think about things in a different way when you're feeling so much pain and when those thoughts have entered your mind. And sometimes people get really overwhelmed if a thought like that enters their mind, and you wouldn't be alone. Like, lots of people have experienced thoughts of dying or of suicide because they are in so much pain, or they are so sad. And it's almost like our brain's like response of, oh, this is an option of escape from this pain and sadness. Not that it's an option we want anyone to take, but our brain just kind of automatically says, like, oh, this is an option to escape this pain or to escape this sadness. But it doesn't mean it's the option to take.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing if those thoughts come to your mind, but it would be really important to go talk to a trusted adult, like a parent or grandparent, family member, family friend, if you were feeling like that. Because they can help you kind of think about it differently and see other options, because there's always other options. There's always different things to consider, and sometimes the person who isn't in so much pain or isn't in so much grief will be able to think clearly, think a little bit more clearly, and recommend some other options. So that would be important.
Do you have any advice for dealing with chronic pain in a healthy way?
Yeah, so dealing with chronic pain in a healthy way, I already kind of talked about this, but just don't give up. Basically, chronic pain, the name of it is chronic, so it's like ongoing. But usually what I found from working with people is that most people have found something that helps at least a little bit. And so when you find that thing, try to be really consistent with it. Some people, maybe it's like, oh, making sure that I do a walk every single day, or that I'm drinking enough, or that I'm making sure that I take time to do a daily meditation, or meditation 2 times a day, and listen to something really soothing and just relax all of my muscles. So most people have found at least something that really helps consistently. And so I would say, for dealing with it, make sure that you keep exploring to find what that thing is. If you haven't found what that thing is yet that helps you, keep exploring, keep trying. There's probably something that will help. And then once you find it, try to be as consistent as you can. Starting new habits can be really challenging sometimes, and it can get hard to be like, oh, I need to take a walk every day. But if you know, go ahead.
Like, for me, it's really hard to, like, remember to drink water every day, because my headache will get worse if I don't. But that's why I'm dehydrated a lot, because I forget, or it's hard to get in that habit.
Yes, so if you know drinking water, sometimes it's really hard to maintain that habit, but just knowing, like, okay, that I know if this will help me, so doing whatever you can, sometimes setting an alarm to go off every hour and a half or something, reminding me to drink a glass of water, or having a chart that I mark off every time I take a glass of water, and I try to fill up my chart every day, or doing something, figuring out a way to be consistent with that habit, whatever that habit is that is helpful to you. And then if you haven't found the habit yet, keep exploring, keep talking to doctors. I know that can get exhausting too, but I've met with people who have, had problems for years and have kind of lost hope. But then if they kind of sometimes if they keep exploring or keep trying out new things, they eventually find something that is helpful for them. So don't give up. Keep looking for options that help. And once you find a few things that are helpful, be consistent with those habits.
Okay. And then I have one more question.
Uh-huh.
If you ran into someone that was dealing with chronic pain, what would you say to them?
What would I say to someone dealing with chronic pain? So, I think just what I had said. Well, at first, I wouldn't just automatically, upon meeting them, say like, "Oh, keep trying or don't give up." But I would usually, when I meet someone who's dealing with chronic pain, I just try to get to know them, and obviously, they're going to have experiences and situations going on that are going to make life different than maybe some other people, obviously. But I would want to get to know them, find out what their likes are, what their dislikes are, find out how they need encouragement, and want to just try to give them encouragement in the way that they need it, because it's going to be different for different people. So, but all back to what I said before too, of like, if you found that thing that's helpful to you, try to be as consistent as you can with it, and don't give up on it.
Okay. So then, is there anything else you would like to add before we go?
Yeah, so that question you're asking about suicide and thoughts of ending your life, I wanted to point out that when we feel a certain way, how our memory works is that if we're feeling that certain way, we often remember and are reminded of all the other times we've felt that way. So, for example, have you ever been kind of like having a fun time with friends or your siblings or something, you get kind of giggly and you just keep giggling and you're thinking of other times when you felt that way, and you just keep telling old stories of when you were giggling and funny, and it's really happy and fun, right? Okay, so the same thing happens when we're feeling really depressed and sad and in a lot of pain and having thoughts of suicide. We remember, since that's what's going on and that's what we're experiencing in that moment, we remember all the other times we've felt that way. And it can feel kind of constant and like hopeless, because I've been feeling this way so much, but our memory kind of plays a trick on us because we forget, or it's not as fresh, all the good times. We're just being reminded of all the really hard times. Same thing as have you ever smelled something and it reminded you of something else? Yeah, so that's how our memory works. It's triggered by something, and then we remember the other times when it was like that. So that's why having that journal I mentioned, where you have the positive side, I think is so important, because you can, when you're feeling that way, you can go back and look and be like, oh, remember mind, this time when you felt really proud of this achievement, or someone complimented me and I felt so good, or this day when I was pain-free. Remember those times, and then it won't feel so constant and hopeless.
Okay, well, Miss Beth, thank you for your time today. And just, yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.